Hello and welcome to this behind-the-scenes making of an AI animated short film using Leonardo AI and Kling AI. Today I will show you an in-depth tutorial on how to create animated content, such as a short film fully using AI. For this short film, it was very much narrative-driven, so I began with writing the script and going over to 11 Labs, link below, to create the narrated voice. Here in 11 Labs, you can choose from a library of voices for animation, documentaries, advertisements, and choose one that is appropriate for your content. I am using the paid plan for 11 Labs, and I added a voice to my library. Next, we use the text-to-speech function and insert the text you want the AI voice to narrate. After each generation, you can get 2 different variations without using more credits just to get the different variation of that text narration. Next, head on to Leonardo AI, link below. Again, I used the paid plan for this. What I really liked is the animate image model. You can change it on the side here. Let's type in the prompt, in this case, a lion overlooking his jungle kingdom. You can use the free plan, but there are limitations to the size and quality of the image as seen here. Here is the results, beautifully rendered anime images. 4 images will be created and you can choose which works best. If you are on the paid plan, you can use the content reference that will transfer the content from one image to this anime image model. Here is an example of one of the images that was originally from another image I generated to be used to drive this anime version of this lioness. So with that, I prompted in different images. Here is one of penguins in the middle on the Antarctic. Leonardo renders great images of anime aesthetics to capture the mood of the scene. Here is a close-up shot of a ladybug crawling on a leaf. Sometimes Leonardo's prompt adherence is not the best. For simpler animals like an elephant drinking water or alligators, it works well. But there are some animals that may be more specific. Their data set may not be as covered. Another thing to note is that having 2 or more different animals or characters may not work at times, so there are some trial and errors you might need to play around with. At times, you might need to get the content reference from another source. I use Google Image FX since it's free, link below. You can play around with the image guidance. I use these settings seen here and play around with different prompts to get a desirable pose of a character or subject. Using that image, I can now drive it as a content reference or pose reference inside Leonardo to create the same image, but in anime style. Another feature I used is the character reference feature inside Leonardo. Instead of training Allura, I decided to rely on this more heavily. By using it, I save time from training Allura. However, this would require you to do quite a few trial and errors and play around with the different prompts to get the best results. However, with the basic paid plan, they give you quite a good number of credits for you to experiment around when trying to get the best shot with a consistent character. There are also some unique challenges, especially here when I was trying to create this Mother Nature-like character, and often she turns out to be more like a monster, because the term Mother Nature can be quite subjective. However, after a few tries, I managed to get a decent-looking character as seen here, and use that to be animated later on. At times, the image would need some editing. Leonardo may show certain artifacts that we may want to remove. Here I use the generative fill function in Photoshop, but you can use other tools such as FreePick, which gives free credits daily as well. To use this, simply highlight the area you want to remove and type in Remove Object. Photoshop will remove it for you. Next, to animate these images, I used Kling AI, link below. These shots were done using the 1.6 model. Kling has a very strong prompt adherence, so we just have to write the action in a simple sentence most of the time. Here are some examples of prompts that describe just one singular action that the subject in the image is doing. There may be some actions where you might want to describe 2 things that are happening. In this case, we try to combine these 2 actions to one sentence, usually something that is happening in the foreground, followed by what's happening at the background.
For some shots, we need to use prompts such as FPV for first-person view and describe an area of the image for the camera to focus towards. So here's an example of FPV towards the canyon side. And here is an example of FPV towards the mountainside. You can use this for those drone-like shots where you want to have an overview of an environment or scenery. Now, at times, Kling may not follow the prompt if it gets too complex. So we need to find a creative way to write our actions if there are more than two things happening. Here I'm showing some poor examples, but this does not happen all the time. I believe with Kling's new 2.1 model, the prompt adherence is much better. Sometimes you might want to have certain elements appear that is not originally in the image, such as this magical warp around the planet. When working with large crowds, it's recommended to use subtle hand gestures and movements to minimize the effects of morphing. Having hand movements that come from off camera, such as this example, may result in morphing. Kling will use reference from the image provided. At times it might work, at times it might have poor results. The same goes when we do facial expressions or head movements that is in the same shot. At times, when we have a group of characters doing the same thing, it may not work exactly as what was prompted. So this depends on the action done. Simple actions such as this rhino's eating grass is simple enough. Certain shots we might want to use camera movements such as camera tracking a moving subject. Using camera pulling in or pulling out from a subject as seen here. At times, if you need the camera to be still, we can just use still camera. Otherwise, Kling may at times mistake your other actions as a need to have camera movements. We can also use the camera rotate function to have the camera rotate from one image to another. In this example, we have two images, first frame and last frame, and use the camera rotate prompt to get a camera rotate effect from the first frame image to the last. We can use camera pull in and pull out to create several dramatic shots. This can suggest a sad or epic scene, depending on the emotion portrayed as well. We can also have the subject move towards or far away from the camera and couple them with a pull in or pull out camera movement to get different types of effects as seen here. Again, we can have some motions happening, in this case, people moving around as the camera pulls out as seen here. Another type of camera movement that we can use is called rotating lens. I find this most effective when we use the prompt rotating lens around a particular subject or object. This will give you the effect of the camera rotating around an object. Next, we look at the prompts used to direct the subject matter. In this example, we have the prompt of a group of whales swimming in the same direction. This is simple enough to do if we have a simple single action. Another example is the polar bear moving its head. Sometimes if the action is a bit too complex for the subject, in this case a non-human, it might not get the best results. Another tip to use when blending two frames is to use smooth frame prompt to transition between the first and last frame. We can also try to combine the smooth frame and rotating lens to get some interesting camera movement results, but sometimes it may look weird and unusual. But sometimes you can get wonderful camera transitions. So I hope you enjoyed this in-depth making of an animated AI short film. I hope these tips is useful for whatever animated content that you may want to do. Do consider subscribing to this channel and checking out our other tutorials. And if you haven't already done so, enjoy watching the Children of Tomorrow short film link below. And stay tuned for more AI content. Take care.